Hi YouTubers, and welcome to the Icebox Files, where I will be pulling the files out of the freezer and cracking them open. For those of you who don't know, I'm going to be doing mysteries from around the world, and in some cases, giving my theories on what possibly occurred during them. Today's is going to be the Dyatlov Pass incident. It occurred on February 2nd, 1959. And for those of you who want to learn more than I have explained in this video, I will be putting a link in the description box below. The incident happened on the east shoulder of the Dyatlov mountain, meaning Mountain of the Dead. Specifically, it was in a pass known as Dyatlov Pass. The pass was named after the group's leader, Igor Dyatlov. The Dyatlov Pass incident occurred during the rule of the Soviets over Russia, and although there were no eyewitnesses or survivors to what actually happened, the Soviet army did investigate the incident and locate the bodies of the 9 hikers. The Soviet investigators at the time determined only that a compelling unknown force had caused the skiers their deaths. For 3 years after the incident, 1959 to 1962, the Soviets forbid access to the area to skiers and hikers. When Soviet investigators went looking for the hikers who failed to return on schedule, they first found the hikers' tent that was apparently cut open in the back with a knife from the inside. The hikers appeared to have fled through a hole without their shoes, some wearing only socks, others barefoot, and/or one wearing one shoe in heavy snow. The investigators found all 9 bodies at the edge of the snow-covered forest. The corpses showed no signs of struggle. However, 2 of them had fractured skulls, 2 had broken ribs, and one of the hikers was missing her tongue. According to investigators, 4 of the victims' clothing had substantial levels of radiation detected on them. The ski group had come together for a ski trek across the northern Urals. It consisted of Igor Dyatlov, who was the leader, and 8 men along with 2 women. Most of them were students or graduates at the Ural Polytechnical Institute, now Ural State Technical University. The goal of the trek was to reach Mount Oron, which means don't go there in native tongue. The route was considered difficult. All of these people were experienced skiers and hikers. Originally, the group started out with 10 members, but one had to return to the village the day after they started their trek because he became sick. His name was Yuri Yudin. So that left 9 members. Weather conditions during the hike became worse. Snowstorms decreased visibility, and they apparently lost their direction and deviated to the west. When they apparently realized their mistake, the group decided to just stop and set up camp on the slope of the mountain for the night. Not much else is known except that the group did not return to the village as scheduled, and relatives began demanding a search and rescue operation to find them. The Soviets launched one to locate the missing hikers. However, this search and rescue operation was not started until February 20th. Later, both police and the army became involved in the search with planes and helicopters. Searchers found the abandoned camp on February 22nd on Dyatlov Pass. The tent was badly damaged, and someone had cut the tent open from the back with a knife. A chain of footprints was seen leading down towards the edge of nearby woods on the opposite side of the path. However, after 500 meters, they were covered with fresh snow. At the 4th edge, under a large cedar tree, the searchers found the remains of a fire and the first 2 bodies of the hikers. Both had no shoes, and both were dressed in only their underwear. Between the cedar and the camp, they found 3 more dead bodies of the hikers. The body poses they were frozen. Of these, 3 seemed to suggest that they were attempting to return to camp when they died. Each of these 3 was found separately at distances of 300, 480, and 630 meters from the cedar tree. It took searchers more than 2 months to locate the bodies of the other 4 hikers. Those 4 were finally found on May 4th, buried under 4 meters of snow in a ravine in a stream valley further in the woods from the cedar tree. Diaries and cameras were found at the camp, but they produced little information about what happened to these people. There is one photo taken of the group setting up camp on the evening of February 2nd, 1959, and everything looks normal. There was a legal inquest into the deaths of the 9 hikers. After the first 5 bodies were discovered, autopsies showed no injuries that might have led to their death, and concluded that they all died of hypothermia. One of the people had a small crack in the skull, but it was thought not to be a fatal wound. When the 4 bodies of the remaining hikers were found in May, the entire picture changed. 3 of them had fatal injuries. The body of one had major skull damage, and 2 others had major chest fractures. Doctors concluded that the force needed to cause such damage would have had to have been extremely high. One of the investigating doctors, Dr. Boris Davodin, compared the injuries to a car wreck victim. Oddly, the bodies had no external wounds, and it appeared as though the bodies had been crippled by a high level of pressure. One woman was missing her tongue as well. Initially, there was some speculation that perhaps people from the native Mansi tribe might have attacked the group and murdered them because the group had encroached on their land. However, an investigation determined that the nature of their deaths did not support this thesis. For one thing only, the footprints of the hikers were visible, and not anyone from anyone else. Also, there were no signs of hand-to-hand combat or struggle. On the night of February 2nd, 1959, in the Urals, the temperature was around minus 25 degrees with blowing snow. Oddly, however, the hikers were dressed only partially. Some of them had only one shoe on, while others had no shoes or only socks. Some of the bodies were found wrapped in snips of ripped clothing, which appeared to have been cut from those who were already dead. It must be noted that up to 25% of hypothermic deaths are associated with paradoxical undressing, which typically occurs during moderate to severe hypothermia as a person becomes disoriented, confused, and combative. People in this condition may start removing their clothing unawares, which in turn increases the rate of heat loss and hypothermia. Journalists who reported on the inquest into the deaths at the time reported that 6 of the group's members died of hypothermia and 3 of fatal injuries. It was also reported that there were no signs of other people nearby or in the surrounding area. They also report that the tent had been ripped or cut open from within the rear of the tent. Investigators determined that the group had died 6 to 8 hours after eating their last meal. All members of the group left camp on foot. Dr. Boris stated that none of the injuries on the bodies could have been caused by another human being because the force of the blows had been too strong and no soft tissue had been damaged. Forensic radiation tests revealed high doses of radioactive contamination on the clothing of a few of the victims. The final conclusion by investigators was that the group had all died due to some compelling unknown force. My theory is, hours after they fell asleep, they were awakened by infrasound waves being emitted by the rockets or such that were spotted by witnesses who were 50 kilometers away and thought to be UFOs. Infrasounds, how they affect the human mind is 20 hertz is considered the normal low frequency limit of human hearing. When the pure sound waves are reproduced under ideal conditions at a very high volume, a human listener will be able to identify tones as low as 12 hertz. Below 10 hertz, it is possible to perceive the single cycles of the sound along with the sensation of pressure at the eardrums. The dramatic range of the auditory system decreases with decreasing frequency. This compression can be seen in the equal loudness level contours, and it implies that a single increase in level can change the perceived loudness from barely audible to loud. Combined with the natural spread and the thresholds within a population, it may have the effect to a very low frequency sound which is audible to some people may be loud to others. One study has suggested that infrasound may cause feelings of awe or fear in humans. It was also suggested that since it is not consciously perceived, it may make people feel vaguely that odd or supernatural events are taking place. And in that panic, a few believed that the avalanche was coming, or that something even worse. But before the others set out to find their fearful friends, one of them set up a camera to take a picture of the reported lights. After setting out, the first two frantically started a fire after their botched attempt to climb the tree that they were under, and was reported that they had tried until their hands were bloody and pulpish. After a fall which fractured the skull of one, by the time the others found these two, they were under the effects of hypothermia, causing them to paradoxically undress, and thus gave their clothes to the four who went to look for help, while the other three attempted to go back to camp to get supplies and clothes for the others, but succumbing to the hypothermia like the first two, they died second. Shortly after, the final four were walking blind in the cold and dark and fell into the ravine, causing the fatal injuries and one of the girls to bite her tongue off. After radiation on their clothes, I suspect that the military had been using the area for their private affairs as suspected in many theories. As a result of such, traces of radioactive substances were left behind, and to prevent the public from wondering what they were doing there, blaming them for it, etc., they simply played dumb and even removed parts of the original case file to cover their tracks. Which is why I think there's still a piece of the puzzle missing, and once it's uncovered, the rest of the story will fall in place. But hopefully one day, someone will come forward with that small piece that'll finally bring closure to the survivors of the family. Okay, and for my next video, I will be doing the Overtown Bridge. But feel free to email me, which I will put in the description box below, or leave a comment on what you think my next video should be about, and I'll see if I can do it. Well, that's it for today's Icebox Files. See you out of the freezer, YouTubers.